someone who knew him on a little more of a personal basis, knew not only as an intelligent and knowledgeable person, but also someone who had a nice sense of humor. Joel Gilbert, would you do me a favor?
I too am very honored to be asked to say a few words and to be here and share this occasion with everybody in honor and memory of Harold. When I think of Harold, I think about the fact that I never stopped learning from him. Every time I saw him, there was something to be gained from just talking to him or being in his presence. And even today, as I sit here and listen to all of the stories and the history that Harold was a part of, I realize that he was truly at the center of many of the most important historical movements and trends and events in contemporary history. The labor movement, of course. He was from Detroit originally, but then he was out in California. And then he comes back here and is a very active member of the labor movement here. And it's just been fascinating to hear that, and as it was just to talk with him and with Dorothy about all of their social activism and the different kinds of movements that they participated in. But that said, the way that I got to know Harold was quite a bit different than some of the things we've been hearing here. I had, as a professor at Wayne State, in a film program, a crazy idea to start running massive casting calls. We would sometimes have to cast for as many as 30 films at one time. And we would pack the actors coming from all over Metro Detroit into a very small contained area up over there in Old Main, and just people would pack into the fourth floor of Old Main to audition for these films. And lo and behold, who would show up, and I didn't know them at the time, was Dorothy and Harold, play or explore possibilities for different kinds of parts. And I can't even begin to convey the craziness and the madness of these events. And I would see this older couple kind of sitting aside or reading scripts, and I would begin to worry about them. But they would hang in there to the very last edition till possibly midnight, you know. And occasionally some guy, who turned out to be Harold, would come over and say, "The script looks very interesting. I could see there might need to be a few changes here or there." But as things turned out, my students, these budding filmmakers, would start to fight to cast Harold into their films, as well as Dorothy and Jerry as well, too. So it became, within a matter of maybe a year or so, that the Dunn family was a part of our filmmaking family, and they were attending for all of these casting calls. And what's interesting, this is where I was beginning to learn. Here's a guy in his 70s, and he's being cast as a sandwich maker entrapped in a vending machine. Totally insane, totally surreal. The kid who wrote it, when I read the script, I thought, what are you smoking? And but Harold understood the script. Harold could get right down to the essence of the part. And before we knew it, we were filming in the boiler room of Old Main, setting up lights. And if you know anything about filmmaking, it's a very tedious, arduous process. You have to set lights, you have to shoot a shot, you have to set the camera, reset the lights, do the shot over again. And Harold was right in there, and he was developing a rapport with my students, these crazy 20-somethings, and you would have no idea how old he was. And that is something to learn about. Another film that comes to mind is a film I and Christina wrote a very sensitive screenplay called 35. It's kind of autobiographical about his development and coming of age as a filmmaker. And Harold was cast in the role of an old older gentleman who had sacrificed his career as a creative filmmaker. It's a very interesting part and a very personal film for IHAM. And as I watched the daily footage, and that's what you call the footage before it gets edited, I was just stunned watching Harold's acting in this performance. The part did not entail a whole lot of talking, a whole lot of words, and it's a kind of a slow-paced film. But what I learned from Harold and watching his presence on the screen, it's not that the words that you say that makes you a remarkable actor. It's the space and the time and the silence between the words. It's the body language. And there's got to be a sense that something is going on in the mind of that character, that they're not just reciting lines. And with Harold, he brought such an intelligence, such a not only intellectual intelligence to the part, but he brought an emotional intelligence. He knew where that character was. And it was a truly brilliant performance. And as I looked at that footage, I felt like I was learning about acting. I was learning what it meant to be an actor. I have to also say that Dorothy has provided me with some of the same experience with her presence and performance on screen. And as I say, within a very short period of time, my film students, undergraduates, graduate students, were fighting to cast them and Carrie in their films, and became a Gunn family production company. Okay. And so that was really my initial experience in getting to know Carol. But in the process of being a part and being there at the auditions and being on location, on production, I would be talking to her and Dorothy, okay? And occasionally going out to eat with them and started hearing more about their histories. And quickly I learned that Harold had an absolutely acute knowledge of literature. His comments, his insight in the scripts that we were producing were really, truly valuable. And as I got to know Dorothy and Harold and Carrie even more, I began to realize that not only did Harold and Dorothy have a great love of the arts, of film, and of literature, and of their learning process, and that they wanted to contribute to the learning environment where my students were studying, but that they also had this history of social activism and social engagement. And maybe that's the biggest lesson, or one of the biggest lessons, that I took away from this whole celebration of Harold's life, is that he was a human being who did not waste a second. He was going to live life to the fullest, and that meant that he not only had to be aware of history and sociology and union issues and the economic system, but he had to love the arts and beauty and literature and young people and the educational process, and he had to be a full human being. And by God, that's a lesson that I have to take away from that. And I think we all can do the same as well. So on that note, I've never stopped and will never stop learning from Harold and Dorothy and Carrie, and thank you for my opportunity to share my memories here today.